Welcome to the Remote Works Podcast,
discussing the opportunity, culture, experience, and community surrounding remote work. I'm Ari Winokur.
And I'm Jonathan Sharp. This is episode 12 with Josh Roley of HomeCoders.com.
This episode is sponsored by the Managing Remote newsletter. If you manage a remote team or organization, sign up to receive the top 3 articles or links of the week for successful remote teams. Sign up at managingremote.com.
Well, I think I say on every episode that we just keep ticking them away, and this is episode 12.
Hard to believe.
It feels like a milestone. You know, there's 12 months in a year, but we're releasing every 2 weeks, so that doesn't work out. So we'll end up on episode 26.
Yeah, thereabouts.
To end out the year, if my math is correct. But it's exciting to be back. And our guest today, Josh Roley of HomeCoders.com, is well-versed in the remote work and helping people connect with that. So it's my pleasure to welcome Josh to the podcast. And starting off, why don't you give us an overview of where you currently live? We were chatting about your internet connection before we started recording here, and what HomeCoders.com does and how it started.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great to be here, guys. I currently live in rural North Carolina, about 45 minutes west of Winston-Salem. And we've been here about 6 months and loved it. We were from Michigan before that, and so it was a very enjoyable winter down here. I started HomeCoders in the spring of 2013, so it's right about the 4-year mark. And HomeCoders is a recruiting firm that specializes in remote software positions. And so essentially work as a recruiting partner with various clients. Mainly they are small to medium-sized companies that are growing, but they don't have their own, they're not large enough to have their own recruiting team in-house. So I partner with them. And it's been a lot of fun.
So Josh, how many people do you have that you've currently placed, and how many different companies are you working with?
Yes. Well, I have about 20 clients right now. But many of them, are not hiring regularly. So I try to work it out in a way where I'm still able to handle that load. But typically, kind of a goal for a year is about 20 placements, and so that's typically my target, and that can be either full-time direct placements or contract to hire placements.
Josh, what's your why? I mean, we ask this of a lot of people. Why for you is remote work such a good thing?
Yeah, I am very passionate about remote work, and for me it's about the family. We are a homeschooling family, and we have 7 children. And my wife and I, early on in our marriage, just kind of caught a vision for that. I had started to work from home a couple days a week at my previous company, and we just saw that as what we wanted. And so HomeCoders was kind of a vision for us to be able to live that out as a family. But also the desire was to help others do the same thing. So that's my why. I just love having a presence here in the home and being close to the family.
That's excellent. And congratulations on 7 kids. I think we can scratch the question if you get lonely at home.
That's true. We have a lot of fun.
So what's your work office environment like there at home, and how does that kind of play out with your family?
Yeah, so it was very important before we made the move was to find a house that had a good home office setup. That's really a priority, to have a door and to be able to have a separate work area. So I've got a nice sized office and it's just been, I've started to use a standing desk, which has been really helpful. And I kind of switch back and forth sitting at the desk, standing up, and I've got a whiteboard on the wall, and it's just a really comfortable setup.
So are you down in a basement or kind of on a main level? Do you have windows?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm on the main level and have a window. In our house in Michigan, I had two windows, and it was great because I was able to it was on the second story. I was able to see the yard and see where the children would play, and it was just kind of a beautiful view.
Oh, excellent.
Cool.
And your internet connection, like I said, we were talking about this before we started recording here, but you, I think, had the fastest internet connection of anyone we've had on the show so far.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a 100 meg fiber connection here in rural North Carolina, which is pretty amazing.
And we've joked many times, but that is not the same rural as rural Wisconsin here. Not anywhere close to 100 megs up or down.
Yes.
So it makes a difference.
It does.
So, how do you deal with distractions? You said you have a big family. That was covered. So I know that can be a distraction. Kids coming and going. You have, I don't know, maybe you have some pets. I don't think we brought up whether or not you do. So how do you deal with those distractions coming and going when you want to get work in, or need to get work in for that matter? How do you avoid them? Is it a closed door policy? Is that work? Do you have times that work better to avoid the distractions? And, what distractions are there? I mean, you said kids, pets. What kind of big distractions do you have in your day?
Yeah, I think, the family is obviously a potential distraction, although I choose to see them as a blessing, but yeah, we have had to set up some protocols of kind of I basically try to stick to a 9 to 5 schedule. I don't always stick to that because I sometimes have early morning calls or evening calls if a candidate needs that. But that's kind of the work schedule. And then they just know to be very careful with the door and to knock if needed, or my wife just texts me if she really needs something urgent. Something else that has been really helpful for me is having some white noise. So I used to use a fan, but then I ended up getting an air purifier. It's quite loud. It kind of just drowns out any of the ambient noise from the homeschooling, down the hall, and that I think has been a big help for me to stay focused.
Definitely all those little things to help. The organized schedule, a way to shut out noise from the rest of the house. Those are all good, helpful tips there. But
there are times when our little 20-month-old will wander in and with a big smile on her face, with her arms wide open for daddy, and I just can't see that as a distraction. It's just too amazing and wonderful. You can't put a price tag on it. So
both Jonathan and I are parents, and Jonathan with his wife expecting as well. I think we can all appreciate that moment as something special.
Yeah.
But do you have a way of blocking out those kids from coming in? I mean, is a closed door generally a rule for them, or?
It is, yeah. And then if I have a call scheduled, I typically will go and lock the door too, just in case. They are trained pretty well to not barge in.
Did you learn that technique of locking the door before or after the international BBC interview that went viral?
Before, but that was hilarious.
So you've avoided that situation so far.
So far. But I did, when I saw that, I had brought the whole family into my office and we watched it together and got a good laugh out of it.
I was grateful that, I mean, you work from home, you have small kids. Sometimes clothes don't follow them. And so they come wandering in stark naked. So I was grateful that for that guy's sake that his kids were clothed.
Yeah.
And so that was great. So switching a little bit here, rather than like talking specifically about your work environment, because it sounds fairly standard from a remote perspective, but we are privileged to have a recruiter with us today. And so I want to talk about recruiting and remote work and kind of pick your brain about that. So for someone that is looking to work remote, what do you see as the most important skill or trait on their resume?
Yes. I know this is kind of an obvious answer, but prior experience with remote work is a real plus. And some of that is just simply for yourself too, to just know if you're wired that way, and if you will enjoy working remote, but something that is something that employers are looking for, someone that has been able to demonstrate experience with that, even if it's just a couple days a week or one day a week. Just knowing that you're able to be productive that way. And I think another trait that is so crucial is self-control. To just be able to be, just to have self-control and to be disciplined and to be productive and not be easily distracted. And I know there's different philosophies out there about self-control, and but I personally believe it is something that can be developed, and that if you just know about yourself that you're not able to do that, you may not be successful working from home.
Yeah, I think that's very true. In regards to self-control, like when you're in an office environment, there are times where it's easy to be more social and things like that. Yeah. And I noticed that when I started working from home, that I had less opportunity to be social with like coworkers and things like that. So it was like, I need to keep working. I mean, I'm on the clock. Yeah. And for me, work went from, a 40-hour a week or 40 to 45 hours a week to 40 hours a week. And that was an intense 40 hours a week. Yeah. But it's been incredibly rewarding being able to like stay focused and hunker down like that.
Sure. I mean, definitely hear that from a lot of people that go into the remote work world, that they find themselves working or even more than 40 hours a week, a lot more, because they just go heads down. There's nobody around to socialize and they just zone in. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hardcore. So continuing on the recruiting track, is there a specific type of opportunity that you would recommend for someone who's looking for their first remote job?
Yeah, I think, I think it would really depend on the person and kind of where they are in their career. Like, because most of the companies I work with are looking for senior level developers. And so if someone is a senior developer, I think there will be a lot of opportunities for them, even if they don't have remote experience. There'd be ways to develop that and just test to see if they're able to do that. And then for someone who is just getting started, it's a lot more challenging to find those opportunities. And I actually have a lot of those conversations with people. And I generally actually recommend that they would go and work in an office for a few years, just because there is an ability to just much more rapidly grow and develop your skills when you're working right next to people, especially to be mentored. Sure. And so that's just generally what I recommend.
Yeah, that was kind of my experience. I had a number of years in the corporate world working in the traditional way prior to jumping remote, and I feel that foundation was really, I guess, a solid foundation for being successful remote, because you understand the office culture and professional culture and how to conduct yourself. And that transfers over to remote, where it's even more important, because you have to be so intentional about your communication and your productivity and your focus. It was kind of a boot camp, and I think it also made me appreciate remote work that much more. On days where it's rough working from home, and I'm like, oh, this is frustrating, and then I go, but I could be in a cube right now. Yeah. And that keeps that attitude in check real quick.
I've seen. I think I've seen a similar kind of feeling also from the in terms of experience with the job listings that I've seen for remote work. A lot of the listings in the remote work job boards and so on, they do seem to always be for more higher level in terms of development or any other kind of work. They do. They do expect an experience. And, I think Jonathan and I touched on this in a previous episode when we were talking about looking for that remote job. Was that, I don't remember what episode number that was. But we discussed that, the whole idea of having that experience and being able to show it somehow online, whether as a developer through GitHub or whatever it might be.
Well, and I think one aspect of it, too, is as you progress forward in your career and become more and more senior level, in some ways, that market is a lot more competitive. And in the developer space specifically, there's a high demand for senior level experienced developers, and there's less of them concentrated in one particular area. So you're going to have to go much wider and further for them. So Josh, the clients that you work with when they're looking to do a placement, are they traditionally all in an office setting and they're augmenting their team with a remote person? Or is it more part of their culture? Are they themselves remote? Do they understand remote when they come to you, or are you helping to educate them in how to make remote successful?
Yes, it's been both. My ideal client is one who has fully embraced remote work, and it's a remote first culture. There are some clients that are, part of the team is co-located and part of the team is remote. And then I've had other situations where I've actually helped coach clients in how to kind of structure their way of working to be able to be more remote friendly. And so I've seen that work as well. But yeah, my ideal client, it would be one that's a remote first culture.
And for the people that you end up placing, when you find them, are you primarily placing people that have worked remote before, or do you find someone that's really skilled in a particular area and say, hey, this is a remote opportunity. Let's see how this would fit. How does that kind of break down for you?
Yeah, it's both. And ideally, the candidates that I would be talking to have worked remotely before, but it just seems like the network I'm building of developers and designers are people that want to work remotely. That's their desire, is to find a remote position. And so some of them have done that in the past, some of them haven't. But I typically am primarily looking for a skill set and culture match for the company. And then we can, if they haven't worked remotely before, we can talk through that. They may not be at the top of the list of candidates, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we wouldn't pursue that opportunity together.
That sounds good. So continuing on this path, so everybody working, whether in an office or remote, has different softwares or different systems, different strategies for enhancing productivity. And, we often find that while some of these cross over between the remote work and the commuter job, some of them are particularly useful in that environment where you're sitting there all alone in your home office or dining room table or wherever you might be. Do you have any particular systems, strategies, softwares, and so on that you recommend for people that are going into remote work or are already in remote work?
I generally don't. I mean, I can recommend a lot of the tools that are very popular that many companies are using, but many of the clients kind of have their own set of tools that they use, and so I don't generally recommend anything specific.
Okay, so you find that, I was just going to say, you find that the tools and systems that people have tend to cross over pretty well from whatever commuter jobs they have into the remote work world? Well,
not necessarily. I mean, a lot of it is just changing your mindset. I mean, tools are a big part of it, but some of it is kind of like what I recommend for a company that's been co-located and they're trying to break into remote work, is to start with the senior leadership and literally have them work remotely themselves. Because when they're kind of eating their own dog food, or they're kind of experiencing the pain that somebody who's working remotely experiences, they will identify the pain points and fix them. But if they don't make that a priority, if the leadership says, hey, hire me the best talent, but they're not willing to change some of the tools and some of the practices and just the culture to make it successful, it's probably going to fail, So that's something I recommend, is just have everybody work from home at least one day a week, or, for a period of time, and identify those things that are difficult. And if they're spending a lot of time in front of a whiteboard, they need to, and they're not doing a great job of detailing the things that were discussed in that room, but they have to think about the people that are remote and what do they need to know to be successful? Because otherwise, if you're the only remote person in a company, you can feel pretty isolated, and you're not going to keep that talent.
So what type of businesses are you working with? Are they businesses that are very tech focused? Is tech just a requirement for the business that they do and they're bringing in? Where's kind of where do they fall in that spectrum?
Yeah, so most of my clients are either agencies, consultancies, or SaaS companies. I have not worked with too many companies that are just a general business with an IT department hiring developers. I do have a few clients like that, but primarily working with agencies and SaaS companies.
Okay. So since you started HomeCoders a number of years ago, what trends have you seen play out with remote work? How has that kind of shifted, and where do you see it going? Moving forward?
That's interesting. I was kind of reflecting on, I'm at like our 4-year anniversary, and when I started HomeCoders, I had seen the trend because I'd been working my previous company. We were building software teams in India, and I had been doing that for a long time. And so I've been kind of following the remote work trend for almost 15 years now. And so I saw it. I saw where it was going. And I remember back when I started HomeCoders, I knew that Jason Fried and DHH were going to be releasing their book Remote that fall. And I thought that was going to be a real inflection point. Actually, about the same time that I was starting HomeCoders, the whole Yahoo with Marissa Mayer kind of canceling the telecommuting policy for Yahoo, that was just happening, and it was kind of erupting on the internet about is telecommuting dead, and I saw past that. That didn't worry me at all. I thought it was just I thought people were going to wake up eventually and kind of see this this trend come through, and I think we have seen that. But I think, and I'm only really focusing on the tech industry, so I don't really know a lot about remote work outside of that. But one of obviously the biggest trend in remote work is just simply the lack of talent, and people are trying to attack that from all kinds of different angles to find talent. But I think that's the biggest driving force of remote work, is just the fact that companies are needing to find a way to attract that talent. And that's one way to do so.
Well, and I think too, with, you talk about the economy over the past number of years, and there's opinions everywhere. But I think even when there are harder economic times, there are greater opportunities that come along with that. And I think one of the things that I have started seeing with remote work is that companies are getting more specific for a particular skill set, and they're getting more selective in their hiring. And so I think that makes remote work more attractive to them too, because they have a much larger talent pool. So I'm curious to see how this plays out over the coming years. At the time of this recording, IBM is kind of making a huge splash in the remote work with pulling everyone back into their offices. And so that's another large entity that's heading the other direction. But that's what they see they need to do to be successful going forward. So I wish them the best. I'm also glad I don't work there right now.
So kind of continuing on the trend idea a bit here, how do you see remote work specifically impacting families?
Yes. Yeah, this, I think I touched on it earlier a little bit, but just that really is my passion, and why I get so excited about it. And as I think about where we are in history, I see this as just an amazing opportunity for families to be reunited, for the first time since the Industrial Revolution, where, back in the Industrial Revolution, Dad went away to the factory. And then after World War II, Mom went away as well, and the family just went in different directions. And now, I think in our culture, we're just seeing a breakdown of the family, and I think there's all kinds of negative fruit playing out in society from that. And so I see remote work creating an opportunity for families to have a successful career and to see the home as the economic center for the family again. And I'm particularly passionate about fatherhood because the average dad in the U.S. only spends 7.3 hours a week with his kids. And in my opinion, that's really sad. And I think there's all kinds of statistics out there about the damage of fatherlessness. And I know there's so many different factors behind it, but like 1 out of 3 children in the U.S. Is being raised without their father in the home. And that just has societal impact. It's huge, and it's something that I'm excited about the potential of families being reunited, because 7.3 hours a week, just like you could talk about having quality time, but my belief is that quality time comes from quantity time. Like if you want to have a relationship with someone, you need to have time to build that relationship. And so I think that's so critical. And there was, maybe I'm giving a long answer, but there was an article that maybe you can put in the show notes that I remember reading on LinkedIn a few years ago. And the title was, "Is Your Kid Worth $100 Million?" And it was just an excellent article. He talked about how he talked to a lot of his friends in Silicon Valley, and he did not have one friend that said they'd be willing to sell a child for $100 million. But his point was,
that's encouraging.
Yeah, no kidding. Amen. But the thing is, his point was that, you could say that your child is worth more than $100 million to you, but how do your day-to-day actions demonstrate that? Like, if everything else in your life, if your career is more important than them, are your choices demonstrating that value that you say you place in your kids? And I just think that's excellent. Mm-hmm. So I want to make them a priority, make that relationship with them a priority. And I love to see other people do that as well.
That's excellent.
Wow.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on the show here. And if people want to connect with you, I'm assuming homecoders.com is the best place to reach out.
That'd be great. Yep. And my email is jroley, JROLEY @homecoders.com.
Excellent. Well, in this next portion of the show called What's the Buzz, Ari and I discuss happenings and news and tips and tricks. So Ari, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So, there's a website out there, flexjobs.com, which is it's not the tip here, actually. It just happens to be a great job a great website that focuses on the whole idea of remote work. Hence the name of being flexible in the job. And they published just towards the end of March an article called Top 15 States with the Most Telecommuting Jobs. And it's interesting. It's actually not per se work from home or work remote. It's a telecommuting idea, which means maybe you do have to be near the office and go in occasionally. But as we kind of discussed today, actually, sometimes that's a good way to get a feel for remote work without actually going fully remote. And so they have a listing of different states and the companies in those states that are suggested for this telecommuting type of work.
That's excellent. And looking at this article here, California is the top state.
Yep.
And they have lots of traffic, so I think that goes hand in hand. But what's interesting about this list is that these are some pretty big name companies, such as Dell and Volkswagen and Toyota, Wells Fargo, Xerox. These are not small jobs. These are really career-focused jobs.
Definitely, all these companies on this list are major companies, and they're all, according to them, have telecommuting opportunities. I haven't taken the time to actually go through and check up on a bunch of, what's available in the different companies, but they're definitely out there. And actually, it's interesting. You say California's first. It's also interesting to note the 3 companies that they put next to California here. None of the 3 ring a bell, at least to me, as any of the major Silicon Valley companies, which people usually associate with California.
Yeah, that is true. I don't see Facebook in the list here.
That's for sure.
Excellent. We'll include the link to that in the show notes. And I think one thing worth noting too is I believe Flex Jobs, if you want to look at specific jobs with them, they are a subscription-based service. I have not used them, and so I can't vouch one way or another, but definitely a resource to check out.
Yes.
So my pick for the week is a little tool called Cloud App, and it's extremely useful when working remote because it allows you to quickly take a screen capture of a portion of your screen. So I use this multiple times a day when I'm working, and if you're working through a problem or you want to share a snippet or a picture of whatever it is that you're working on with someone else via Slack or chat, that type of thing, you can quickly just snap a portion of the screen and it creates a link automatically, adds it to your clipboard, uploads it for you, and then you can paste that link to your colleague and they can see the picture that you did. And so it works with screenshots, it works with files. It's a slick little app, and I believe it's cross-platform too. So it's Mac OS and Windows, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Yes, it is cross-platform. I can say that because right now I'm on my Windows computer, and I'm pretty sure this laptop has it installed. But yes, I do like to install that app on every computer that I do set up. It's very useful.
Yeah. And there's a free version of it and a paid version. And so the free version is actually very useful.
Yes.
It's not highly crippled like some free versions are. So something worth checking out. Thank you for listening to the Remote Works podcast. This podcast is only half of the conversation. The other half is from you, our listeners. We appreciate your questions and feedback. You can leave us a voicemail at remote.works/voicemail, and we may incorporate it into a future episode.
Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or others. Please take a moment to leave us a review when you subscribe. Be sure to include your real name and mention your website or social media link, and we may incorporate the review into a future episode. The show notes with links to resources, along with a transcript of this episode, is available at remote.works/12 for episode 12.
You can recommend a guest or topic for the podcast, or sponsor an episode by visiting us at remote.works. Finally, until next time, go be awesome. Thank you for listening. This is the Remote Works Podcast. This podcast is a production of and copyright Cultivate Now. All rights reserved.